Hey, everybody, welcome to episode 49 of the Giant Zone, where, of course, you've got your co-host, Steve the Banker.
Good evening.
And you got yours truly, Carl Fly Guy, or Fly Guy Carl, and whatever you want to call me. Just don't call me late for dinner. And then, of course, we have our good friend who's back, I believe, for the third time now, our good friend Mitch. Mitch, always a pleasure to have you, and welcome back.
Oh, thanks for having me back. I'm happy to be here.
And you are happy to be where you are because you're in New Jersey for the draft party, aren't you?
Yeah, stoked about that. We'll see if they hold on to 25 and see how Thursday works out for us.
Is this your first time going to the draft party?
Yes,
Oh, you should have a great time.
I'm looking forward to it.
You should have a great time. With that, we have a lot to cover tonight, so I'm going to kind of cut out the small talk tonight. I am going to ask, though, please, again, like we do every show, please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you watch us on YouTube, or give us a 5-star rating if you download our show, and please just spread the word. Tell your friends and family and whoever else you think may have an interest to kind of tune in and just join the growing community here that is the Giant Zone. And we appreciate all the support. We love we love interacting with all of you. So please keep up the support. We appreciate it. Given that tonight is our what now in our second year, what we call our annual draft show. So we've got a bunch of things we want to talk about. So let's get right into it. We got a couple questions here that we're going to discuss. So the first question we have is, let's go around the room here, guys, and let's assign odds to what we think the Giants are going to do. What percentage do you give the Giants for trading up? What percentage do you give the Giants to trade down? What percentage do you put on staying put? And what percentage do you put on drafting a best player available in round one? So I know I've got a lot of info on this. Steve, why don't you start us off here?
All right, thanks, Carl. So first I'll just start with the percentages that I signed, and then I'll give you my logic. I think there's about a 40% chance the Giants trade up. I think there's about a 40% chance the Giants trade down. The number 25 pick has been traded 6 years in a row. I heard on another podcast 5. They were wrong. I did the research. It's actually 6 years. I even have the teams that did the trade in front of me. So the odds are there's going to be a trade by Joe Schoen. That's my estimation. The problem with this draft is, it doesn't seem to be, it seems to be very, very, very strong rounds, days 2 and 3, but first round, there's probably not a lot of first round graded high quality players available. So who knows what Schoen and his staff really think. So that leaves 20% as staying put. And I think that it is possibility that they will stay put. I only sign at 20% because at the end of the day, I don't know what type of player is going to be there, but it takes 2 to tango. And just because we as fans may say, oh, he's got to trade out, and just because he may want to trade out, if there's not a team that sees value and a player that they want, and it only takes one, but if they don't see it, well, they may be stuck. And here's the other 2 things I'll say before I throw it to you guys. I've heard a lot of scouts interviewed on podcasts, and the common theme seems to be that NFL teams, and each team is different as to how many exactly and which players, but on any given year, most teams, and it seems to be Schoen would be similar, they usually have 140 to 150 players total that they feel are draftable. We all know there's 300 or more, but they eliminate a lot of guys. Either they're not what they're looking for in terms of fit, personality, whatever. So there's only going to be so many players that Schoen and his staff have said we want to draft them at some point. And number 2, I think there's only so many positions where the need is going to meet the value at that pick. For example, we know Philadelphia historically doesn't draft linebackers in the first round. I mean, I feel like Schoen is probably very similar. We're still learning how he works. So those are my percentages: 40% up, 40% down, and 20%, I think, chance that they may stay.
So I'm going to jump in here, Steve. I went in a little different direction. For trade up, I went 5%.
Okay.
Trade down, I went 50%. Stay put, I went 15%. And then best player available, I went 35%. In doing my research, and I actually saw this on another podcast, in order for them to move up, you've got that whole Jimmy Johnson point system. All right. So the way it broke down, so the Giants have three seventh round picks. All right.
Yeah.
The seventh round picks are only worth 1 point, and the sixth round pick is only worth 8 points. So the 25th pick, where the Giants currently draft, is worth 720 points. So let's say they wanted to move up to 18th. That 18th pick on this Jimmy Johnson point scale is worth 900 points. In order for the Giants to get there, in addition to their 25th pick, they've also got to trade their number 25 pick, which is their third round pick, which is 89, their fifth round pick, which is number 60. And so the third round pick is 145 points. The fifth round pick is 27 points. To do unless there's someone there that they felt dropped and they have to have, I can't see them giving up all that draft capital. Not from what we've seen out of Joe Shane, one player. So that's why I devalued moving up. And then I went the opposite way from moving down, because they can get more. They can actually ask more to move down and still get a player they like. So again, I say move up 5%, move down 50%, stay put 15%, and best player available 35%. What do you have, Mitch?
Carl, you and I view it the same way, apparently, because I'm 5% moving up. I don't believe you move up in the draft except for a quarterback. Unless, of course, something crazy happens, like Christian Gonzalez is somewhere in the teens, then I'm willing to go up. That's the one player that I would put some real capital in getting up there and getting them. So I'd say maybe 5% to move up, because I just don't see the value in it. The wide receivers are all in the same type of range. Move back just because it seems like it's what's happening. I mean, I can see it 50-60% to move back just a few spots, get an extra fifth, and maybe parlay that in moving back up later in the draft. Best player available, I think that's really going to be what they plan on doing wherever they land. So I'll put that at like 60%. And and staying put is, I would say that's 50-50. If they get an offer, they may even take a little less value just to get an extra pick in the fourth round or what have you, to move back 4 or 5 spots.
Yeah, I agree. If they do want to move back, and here's the tricky part of that about moving back, right behind them is Dallas and Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So they're not going to go there, obviously. So that leaves, I think it's Buffalo, Cincinnati,
Yep,
San Francisco, and Kansas City.
right.
So they can actually, so the point differential, if they move back with Buffalo, would also net them Buffalo's 4th round pick.
Right.
And then if they move back with Kansas City, that nets them Kansas City's 3rd round pick. So given that, that's kind of why I weighed my percentages the way I did, Steve. So I thought that was go ahead.
So this question, when I wanted this question is not what do we want the Giants to do? Big difference. This question is, what do we think the Giants to do? Do I want so let me start by saying this. 3 of the last 6 years that the 25th pick has been traded, it was the Ravens that traded into the 25th and flipped with someone. If we look at that again this year, and it doesn't mean it's the Ravens again, but you know what? 50% chance. I mean, history shown. So like, just for what and giggles, the Ravens pick a few spots ahead at 22. That's 780 points on the Jimmy Johnson chart. That would cost the Giants their 4th round pick. Let me reiterate. Do I personally want the Giants to trade their 4th round pick this year to move up a few spots, even if it's one of the better players? No, because I think the strength of this draft will be in rounds 2 through 5. And we have a lot of needs still. So do I really? I don't want them to. However, Joe Shane has mentioned, and he has said, and I think he's open to trading up. So the reason I say that, and piggybacking, Carl, on what you said a moment ago, I said last year there might be a number of quarterbacks taken early in the draft, and that would force some good players down. I was wrong. All we saw was Kenny Pickett, right? This year, I feel it's the same. It's not a strong quarterback class. We're all hearing the same thing. There's four, maybe five guys who could go. Somebody can fall in love with the quarterback in Tennessee. I personally think he's better than Will Levis. The problem is he's a little older. So who's to say those 4 or 5 quarterbacks don't go in the top 15, 16, 17, 18 picks? Well, what's that going to do? It's going to push down some excellent more than likely defensive players, that and maybe Jackson Smith-Njigba. So now, are you starting to think a little bit different? Maybe one of the top 2 or 3 corners drops. Maybe one of the top 3 or 4 edge players drops. Those are both things that Giants desperately need. Do I really want them trading the 4th round pick? No. But you know what? If you get an immediate starter on day one, an impact player. So I'm just saying, do I want them to trade, for example, the 4th round pick? No. This is what do I think he'll do? And I think there's a 40% chance one of those really good true 1st round graded players could drop. And if the price is right, maybe he jumps up.
But the question, so and look, that's a valid case, and I don't disagree with anything you said there. But if these players drop, I don't think the Giants are going to be the only teams looking to then trade up and get them. So then it becomes a question of who has more draft capital to trade up with. And I don't think the Giants have that. The Giants draft is stacked for later rounds. I don't think they have enough to get to move up. That's my point.
That's a fair point.
Yeah. I completely agree with your logic, Steve. I just don't think they have the juice to do it this year.
I don't want them to, but
neither do I. Right. Neither do
Mitch, does that make sense what I was saying though? Like,
yeah, absolutely. But to Carl's point, Giants have 10 picks in the draft, and 7 of them are on day 3, and those picks are the value is not there to be able to move up. Do you want to risk capital from 2024 to move up? And like I said, there's one player that I would do that for, and it's Christian Gonzalez. I mean, there's nobody else that I would move up for. I mean, JSN is probably going to be a great wide receiver, but does he move the needle that much to give up a 2nd round pick next year? I don't know. I would say no.
I wouldn't do it. That's just me.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
I don't want him to do it either.
Right.
So in the way Steve laid out the question, it's not what we want. It's what do we think? I don't think he's going to do it. I think the due diligence by taking him out for dinner, and I mean they had to do that. I get that, but let's also understand one thing. None of us knew the Kadarius Toney trade was coming. We had no clue that was coming. So you know what? Joe Shane's a pretty good poker player too. So. Right. Maybe and I'm going to get into that later in my don't be shocked statement, but I mean, I don't want to tip my hand there, but I think he's got a plan, and based on everything he has said, he wants to build this roster, fill this roster with young talent. I get that. I don't think mortgaging draft picks for one player is his plan or his way. Steve, I could be completely wrong, and I may owe you a second dinner and drinks.
Let me just say this, guys, before we move on. I struggled with this, believe it or not, a lot. Ooh. And part of it was mentally preparing myself because I actually went through the same thought process you both did. No, I don't think so. Who would? Maybe. I don't think. And part of the reason is for my own benefit. I was selfish. I said, I just want to be prepared, man. This is only the 2nd year. We only have 1 draft with this guy.
Right.
Of him being actually in charge. We have a lot of history of him as a scout and a talent evaluator. Yeah. But we don't have him as the actual guy pulling the trigger just 1 year. That's it. Right. So I'm like, I just don't want to be totally fooled.
But he made 2.
I was like, let me give it 40%.
But he made two trades. What was it, day 2 last year? And he traded back both times. Now,
Right.
different draft, different scenario, but did he show his hand last year? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. But Steve, you the way you presented the question was, it's not what we want, it's what we think he's going to do. I had to change my entire philosophy because I first went, this is what I want to see him do, and then rereading, I says, that's not the case. So good question.
You guys both make really strong points.
I think all three of us do. All three of us do. All right. So the second question: if the Giants make the pick, where do they go? Do they go cornerback? Do they go wide receiver? Do they go center? Or do they go somewhere else? Mitch, we'll start with you on this one.
To me, the value, if they stay at 25, is at corner. There's probably 5, first round picks at corner position, and I think that's where they go if they stay there. The wide receivers that should be available around the 25 level, you could get the same type of guy at 57, or move 3-4 spaces up to get your guy at 53 or what have you. Make a subtle move to get the wide receiver you want. So, and center, I hope not. I'm not gonna blow a gasket if they take a center, but that's not the direction I would go. There's not value in drafting a center at 25 unless he's a surefire Pro Bowler, and I don't see that in this class.
Steve?
I agree with Mitch. 80%. So just with the tweak though, I'm at 80% corner, but I also think it could be a phenomenal edge player that drops. You guys may have seen my Twitter post today. We have 2 good edge players right now, but one was injured much of last year. The other one was a rookie, and we think we know what he's going to be. We think we've seen him, but all of our great Giants teams had multiple edge players. And, when we had Lawrence Taylor, we still drafted Strahan. That was my post, his cool little quick interview. When we had Strahan and OC, they drafted Tuck in 2006. And I remember, like, why? And then it wasn't many years after that, they drafted Kiwanuka. So, you know what? That's a lot of the reason we lost games last year when we lost them. It wasn't just our run defenses. We couldn't put pressure on quarterbacks. So I wouldn't be shocked 80% corner, or if it's only maybe the 4th or 5th best corner, but top 10 player who's an edge player drops, he has a decision to make. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised. I think it's one or the other. I'd say 10% wide receiver, but I don't want it. I agree with everything Mitch just said. No need to rehash. He said it perfectly. I think there's a tremendous amount of value of wide receiver in the middle rounds, but not in the first. And I agree. I am desperate for the Giants to draft an offensive center. I think like between 25 and 32 is the sweet spot. Usually every year there's one. The Ravens last year took Linderbaum. A few years ago, Garrett Bradbury ended up being but it could be a Travis Frederick, who's like a Hall of Fame quality center too. There's been a lot of really good centers taken in the lower half of the first round. But I agree with Mitch. I think there's 4, 5, or 6 potential centers. We can go over them later. Some of the examples. You can hopefully the problem is, and this is the calculus for Shane and his staff, are they always going to miss out on them though, because we're picking towards the bottom of each round? Some of the good centers may go in the middle of the second. Then the next year may go in the middle of the third. I'll be devastated if they don't pull away with one, and I might look back and go, man, I wish we had gotten one at 25. But I'm agreeing with you, Mitch. For me, 80% corner or edge if a tremendous edge drops. Otherwise, wide receiver and offensive center, 10% each.
So I thought this was an interesting question that I had to do a deep dive on. And I looked at those 3 positions. In my opinion, there's 4 top cornerbacks. All right. And then there's 4 top receivers. Okay. That will probably all be gone by the time the Giants pick at 25. Again, if they stay there. All right. But this is a very deep cornerback draft. And there are a lot of I think there is some cornerbacks that are first round talent that are going to go in the second round just because there's not enough teams picking cornerbacks. So given that, I toss out the receivers because I agree with both of you. We can get the wide receivers later on in the draft. Let's also keep in mind that they added some receivers in free agency.
Mhm.
All right, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute. None of them were tall to the point that to the discussion that we had before we came on air. All right, none of them were tall. They're all pretty much those slot shifty guys for the most part. Okay, so then you say to yourself, well, we need that number one guy. Well, maybe we don't. Maybe the offense they're going to run doesn't require that big go up and get it guy. Okay, so I still think it's going to be probably Steve, and I'll go with your 80%. But you know what? I think that 20% might go center. I would not be now. Look, they signed the backup center from Pittsburgh to add depth. Okay. They also said, well, we got Ben Bredesen, and I thought Bredesen did a very good job at guard last year. I hate to see him slide over.
Yes.
Now, Brian Daboll has some ties to John Michael Schmitz out of Minnesota. I forgot exactly what the connection is, but there's a connection between him and that center. So, and I don't know which one of you made the point, Steve, maybe it was you, is, well, do we look at center because we've been missing it all along and it's going to continue to be a hole? I think that's spot on. And again, if the top four corners and the top four receivers are gone and nobody drops, I would not at all be surprised if he goes with the center. And I would be perfectly happy with it. So I'm tossing out wide receiver. I'll go, Steve, I'm actually going to lower it a little bit. I'm going to go maybe 70-30 cornerback center. I think there's a very strong possibility that he gets.
Okay.
I just don't think they want to move Bredesen. I think they're saying all the right things, but right now everybody's trying to say the right things and put up smoke screens. So that's my thinking there. I don't know. You guys both make solid points, but
I get what you're saying, Carl. You could take the fourth, fifth best wide receiver corner, or who you deem as the number one center.
Yeah. I mean, look at it. You've got Andrew Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
You drafted Evan Neal last year. Now, if you draft your center, okay, I'm not. We're not. That's a different show, Mitch. My point is, now let's say you get your center. So you've got 3 of the 5 positions locked up, at least for the next 4 or 5 years. They're young, they grow together. When I thought about it at first, I'm not going to go center. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense to me that there's a strong chance they might just do it. So
What do you do? What do you both do if and listen, I'm not a rocket scientist. It doesn't take a genius to know that Osiris Torrance is like far, 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 far and away the best offensive guard in the draft. I mean, he was a monster at Louisiana Lafayette or whatever, and then followed Napier over to Florida. Could have easily stayed there. Played with all these guys who are now in the NFL, like the tackle in Miami, like played on that college team. Said, no, I'm going to go to UF where the big boys are in the SEC, and he dominated. I mean, he was 400 pounds in high school and reshaped his body to 320 or 330. I mean, he's a mountain. He's like mountain strong, athletic. He's everything you want in a guard. He drops to 25. What do you do?
take him. You move Bredesen to center and you take him.
Thank you. Mitch?
I'm
putting you on the spot, brother.
Yeah, no, I wasn't ready for that. But
I know.
Yeah.
You'd love to do that once.
Yeah, the Giants have so many guards on their roster. You would think that they would like them. But if you get a plug and play dominant guard, I say go for it.
Absolutely.
I like that.
Absolutely.
It's hard for me because Dallas, by all accounts, would jump on him right behind the Giants. They are desperate to rebuild that offensive line a little bit. They're having some issues there.
Right.
Lael Collins left, went to Cincinnati. I mean, their offensive line took a little bit of depth issues the last 2 years, injuries. The guy is like made for Dallas, which irritates the you know what out of me. And somebody could trade up, which Carl, Mitch, that would be the Giants now could trade down a few spots, get some
Mhm.
nice little sugar, a little cha-ching, little extra picks. Like, man, can you? He's a 10-year. Look, when the Jets took Elijah Vera Tucker a couple years ago, I was like, good Lord, man, that guy's going to be good. And he's literally the best offensive lineman. He could play any spot on the line, and he had a little bit injury issues, but he is already like a top 5 guard in the NFL. This guy's like that, you know. So I was just curious.
I don't see him dropping though, Steve.
He may.
I
He
think
may
that's a
drop.
no-brainer. That's a no-brainer. I'll make the pick for him. I mean, that would be wonderful.
He just, I mean, we could still draft a center further down. I'm just, you know,
Sure.
Well, look at it. What did we all say the biggest weakness was after last season? Interior offensive line.
can you imagine though? Now
Oh,
you got Andrew Thomas, you got a potential Pro Bowler right away.
yeah.
Like he's that caliber player by all accounts. Everything I've read, I've seen. Yes, center's an issue, although maybe they'll address it a little further down. Um, we still got the kid out of North Carolina that they absolutely adored, Marcus McKeithen. He's was he 6 foot, almost 6'7", 340
Yes.
pounds. He's an
Yes.
absolute monster. We have a Zudu, obviously they love. Um, and we still got 1 year left out of that right guard that we signed that I was wrong about. We all thought he was going to be good coming from Indy, and
Yeah.
and then Evan Neal. But all of a sudden now, that offensive line could be transformative. Anyway, there's just that could, and by the way, guys, it could really have he could be there. Don't be, anyway.
I would be shocked. You know what? I would love it. I never
Might
gave
be
it
there.
much thought. I thought he was so good, Steve, that I just never gave a thought to him being there at 25.
Yeah, he might be there.
But if that slide starts, it's funny you bring this up. If he does start to slide, then all of a sudden the odds change about Joe Shane moving up. Getting back to question number one.
Yeah. Well, maybe this is a good segue to priority positions.
Yeah, so let's get into that. So last year, Joe Shane picked all positions out of need. Is it probably a good chance he's not going to keep all 10 picks this year, although we can, we've just beat that horse to death. What positions do you feel are priority positions here in this draft? Go ahead, Steve. We'll start with you on this one.
Well, no, I've been going a lot first. Mitch, do you want to go first?
Sure. Priority to me is secondary. We have a need, and B, we have guys like, is Jackson going to be back next year? You have no idea whether Robinson's ever going to be healthy or not. Rodarius Williams seemed to fall out of favor. I don't know why. And whenever I saw him on the field, to me, he looked pretty good. Obviously, he lost Love. So to me, I want to see 2 corners drafted this year. Defensive line has to be addressed as well. Even though we got Robinson and we got Nacho, Williams is probably off the books after this year unless he restructures. Dexter cannot handle 90% of the snaps year in and year out. He's going to wear down. And nobody wants to see that. I love that guy. I'd like to, I want to see him here for 5-10 more years. I know he's not going to last 10 years, but you know what I'm saying. And of course, offensive line. I mean, that's a position that has to be drafted every single year. You have to get it right. You have to have the next man up mentality. I mean, you saw me cross my fingers when we said Evan Neal. He was my pick last year. I wanted him. He struggled mightily, but there's already conversations about kicking him inside. And I mean, I thought of something crazy there is 5 solid offensive tackles in this draft. Would it be out of pocket to draft a tackle and kick him inside right now? I think it'd be crazy because you just spent the 7th overall pick on him last year. But if you're trying to fix the offensive line once and for all, is that the craziest thing that they could do?
So I agree with you at cornerback, especially with the uncertainty of does Adoree Jackson come back or not. And again, Robinson, Williams, you brought up great points about them. Now let's not forget that we drafted Flott last year. We drafted who's my guy, Steve?
Dane Belton is safety, you mean?
Yeah,
Or
Dane Belton at safety as well. So there is some youth back there. I wasn't on Flott. Steve and I discussed that numerous times, but he did make some decent plays. So I'm going to give credit. In my book, jury is still out on him. Steve, I'm going to die on that hill, but the jury is still out on him with me. I just can't get over the fact. I'll never forget the play where I saw him. He just, instead of wrapping his arms, he had a clear tackle on somebody. He just threw himself and he missed a tackle. I never got over that. Anyway.
no, you did not.
No, I still have. So I agree with all the questions we have at cornerback. Yeah. I think that's a big area of need. We just discussed offensive line. In my book, you can never have enough quality depth on the offensive line. And I think if they do add some quality depth, I think we see the end of Pert and probably Lemieux, which I'll drive him to the airport. So I go cornerback, offensive line. We addressed secondary, we addressed linebacker. We're getting Beavers back. His injury happened early, so hopefully he's ready to go, which would make me happy. Mitch, you're spot on about Dexter Lawrence. He's going to wear down. So we'll see. I think they're also going to add a running back.
Yeah.
There's also going to be a running back added somewhere. I see that. So those are my positions. And again, do we all want that big Plaxico type receiver? Sure we do. But they added a lot of receivers. So that tells me that there's a plan there that may be on the back burner. Because you know what, like Steve, like we said in the last show, the trade for Darren Waller to me was that he wasn't impressed. Shane wasn't impressed with any of the free agent wide receivers in the market. And quite honestly, I don't think he's impressed with too many of these receivers in this draft that he's going to have a shot to get. And let me make that clear, that he will have a chance to get. So he traded for Waller, who could also be, he's going to be that move tight end. We all know that. So again, I'm going to say cornerback, offensive line, defensive line. Those are my picks. Steve? And running back.
So let me start by saying this. I said this on the last show. There is not a single position group on the team does not need an infusion of talent. There is not, I'll repeat it, a single position group. Somebody can say, well, we're good at quarterback. No, we're not. It's not true. It's a lie. We have two starting caliber quality quarterbacks. Davis Webb is gone. We don't have a third stringer. And Joe Shane was asked this in his recent presser, and he's like, yeah, we'll probably get a guy. He's not going to tell us exactly what he's going to do, but he knows it needs to be addressed. So even quarterback, we technically need somebody. We need a third stringer, maybe somebody develop like San Francisco did, like New England's done in the past, like many teams have done. So anyway, it's not a priority. And that takes me to my second point before I mention I have 4 positions. Is what I love about what he's done this offseason is signing the 2 defensive linemen, Ashawn Robinson and Nacho, strengthens immediately that defensive line. So it's not, as he likes to say, we're not shopping hungry. We're not like, oh my God, we better get it. We better get it. Getting Darren Waller along with now Bellinger and a couple other guys that are nice backups. It's tight end is one of perhaps the 3 strongest position groups in this draft class, maybe that we've seen in a decade from top to bottom. But it doesn't mean we have to, oh my gosh, take a guy. Now, if we have a tight end and a position of high need, and they're both kind of graded the same, take the position of high need because we got the tight end. So what I love that he did in this offseason is it sets us up to not, as he likes to say, shop hungry. 4 positions, offensive center. I've used this expression before. It's a false multiplier. There's a reason the 2 teams in the Super Bowl had 2 of probably the 3 best centers in all of football. It's no coincidence the best offensive lines have a really good center. If you have a great center, it helps you with your blocking scheme. You can insert a guard and it takes a little bit less pressure off the tackle to have to worry about stunts and double teams and pickups. So it just provides so much flexibility on the line. And if you get a guy who's only played center, instead of trying to take a round peg and put it in a square hole with these guards, get a guy who's just dominant at center, who's played center. So I think offensive center is one of the 4 spots. I agree with what you guys said about cornerback, but this is what I'll add. I agree with everything you both said about our roster and where we're sitting at corner. There's no guarantees. Um, it's a very, very, very expensive position. It's one of the 3 or 4 most expensive to go out into free agency and get. Left tackle, great pass rusher, obviously quarterback. We all know that's at the top of the food chain. And then the best corners, a true number 1 corner, you're going to pay for that. So if you can find a corner in your draft, true number 1 or even a number 2, it also helps you with your salary cap down the road. So I agree with everything you said about Adoree. He's probably here for at least just 1 year. He might be here longer, but it's hard to say. There's no guarantee. So we need to add depth at the cornerback position. We need to find a guy. That's number 2. I agree with what you said about wide receiver. We have a bunch of guys on 1-year contracts. We need talent. I'm just, again, reiterating what we've already said in prior portions of this show. I personally don't think the first round is the place to do it in this draft with this class. And lastly, but not least, and that goes back to my post on Twitter today, we need pass rushers. We got to get another pass rusher. Now, Wink, and I mentioned this months and months ago on our show, is and the group that he has on his staff that he's collected over the years and that he trusts are unparalleled at developing middle round pass rush prospects. We saw that in Baltimore with the Darius Toney, and I mean, we can name over and over and over the players over the course of his career when he was Baltimore as linebackers coach and then as defensive coordinator that they found and developed. So I'm not saying it has to be in the first round, but it's for me, it's one of my 4 priority positions. I want to see them draft. So I agree with what you said. I think running back, tight end, I think there's a bunch of positions we can add talent, and it would be great. Offensive line, of course, but I think pass rusher is more of a priority than people realize.
Interesting. Okay. Next question. And this was a tricky one. Is there one wide receiver over 6 foot that the Giants can get in rounds 2 to 4 that you really like? You can only pick just one. Mitch, you're the guest. We're going to let you start this whole debate.
Jonathan Mingo. That was an easy question for me.
Yeah, that was my guy.
Yeah. The only thing is if you're like me and you sit around and you play all the mock draft simulators and they fooled you, you can get him in the 4th and 5th round. It's not happening. We'll be lucky to get him at 57. I mean, I would be ecstatic if they were able to pull it off at 57. So you only said I could pick one. That's my guy.
Steve?
He was my guy, but I came prepared with a backup. Look, man, Mingo, for those listening or watching, he's wide receiver out of Ole Miss, 6'2", imposing muscular build. He's not just like a 6'2" guy. He's fast. There's really nobody with his combination of size, physicality, and speed. He ran a 4.4 640. He's tough. He's physical. 6'2", 220. He's not one of these 6'2", 205. He's a beast. He's not DK Metcalf, but he's getting there. He's like AJ Brown. He runs crisp routes, attention to detail, compares to Anquan Bolden. We all remember Anquan Bolden. Well, I don't know. And the guy just made it happen every week. Physical, tough, dependable. A lot of the things that Shane and Dave will talk about. Tough, smart, dependable, right? He makes tough yak, but he's a good blocker. So that's like icing on the cake. Why isn't he in the first round? He's not sudden, he's not explosive. When you get that, but then if you get like a Terrell Owens, now you're getting like, oh, but I got that, but now I got a guy. You got that. If he did, now you're talking a top Jamar Chase, right? Top 10, top 15. So my backup is Cedric Tillman.
Oh,
Tennessee. Well, you had me go second, man. You could have gone.
oh.
You're the MC, brother. You could have
That's
gone.
what I get for being the nice guy and not being selfish.
Look, compares to Michael Pittman Jr. He's tall. He's actually an inch taller. 6'3", 213. He ran a 4.54 40, so not quite as fast, but close enough. He's got okay speed. It's fine. When you get to that size and you still run a 4.5, you're good. Um, he had a monster 21 season. Alabama, Georgia, they played, and he had huge games. He's physical, he's tough, he's unfazed in traffic, body control on deep throws. He's got A+ ball skills, and he's good after the catch. He gets yak, even though he's not a burner. Um, Problem is, again, very similar issues. He's not sudden, he's not fast. He doesn't have a second gear. Um, and the other issue is 2022, he wasn't quite the same player. So there's some concerns. Can he return what he was in 21? Injuries, whatever. So I think that's a guy they could get, Cedric Tillman out of Tennessee. But I was prepared with that because the problem is after those two guys, it seems to drop off a bit. Like instead of just having like an issue, now you're having multiple issues with some of these guys. Their route stem, their ability to run the route tree, like concentration, blah, blah, blah. Like as you go down the draft, I think the Giants can find guys with traits, but it's going to be hard to find guys as polished as these two.
Thanks, guys. So
Next question.
pretty much. So I had 4.
There you go.
So Mingo, obviously, Mingo reminds me of Deebo Samuel. But to that point, there's something. Mingo has sometimes his focus issues and he has consistency issues. So sometimes he can make the tough catch, then the easy ones he drops. So now, and look, all receivers drop passes. All right, so I don't want to pick on him. I would have liked him too. Okay, Tillman, Steve, you took my thunder there as well. But I kind of went in a different direction. I kind of went to see, all right, who might, instead of looking at us, who can we, pick and place right now and is going to be a good guy. I kind of went with, give him a year, let him learn the NFL, let him adjust, and then we see what we got.
I like that.
So I went Rashee Rice out of SMU. All right. I think now that offense, so the offense that they ran down there scares me because it's not your prototypical type NFL offense. There was a limited number of routes that he ran, but man, he's got all the tools. He's fast. He makes a good catch. He can run after the catch. I think he's a developmental player that year 2, give him year 1, let him learn the game, let him adjust to the speed of the NFL and so on and so forth. Coach him up on his route running a little bit, help him get a little bit more separation. I think he's going to be that kind of player. And you know who I love? I just can't get past him is Xavier Hutchinson out of Iowa State. That's, you know what? I find that to be a solid program. Year in and year out, they're always a tough program. Do I think he's ever going to be the guy in an offense? No. Do I think he's going to be, who he reminds me of? Sterling Shepard. He's just going to be that guy that when you need the catch, that's the guy you're looking for. Good hands. Look, he's not the fastest guy in the draft. We know that. He's not the best receiver in the draft, but he's consistent. And that's what I think. I just think that it's invaluable. So those are my 2 because I had a feeling that the 2 guys at the top of my list were going to be gone. And I'm so glad I did that because you bastard stole my thunder. So thank you. So finally, let's end with this because we like to end with this. Don't be shocked. And you know what? I'm going to be selfish now and I'm going first here. And I'm going to repeat myself on this one. Don't be shocked if he trades Saquon Barkley.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Look, people don't kill me. I'm not saying I want this to happen. I'm saying don't be shocked. Look, I think Sean wants to be aggressive. I think Shane said all the right things. Yeah, we like Saquon. We wanted to be back. You know what? They're at an impasse. Saquon's been chirping a little bit that he's not happy. The Giants, for the most part, just keep saying the same thing. Yeah, well, he's a great player. We want to be here. Player like that turns into picks. You turn that player into picks, and Steve, to the very first question, you can then go up and get the guy you want. And I'm going to take it a step further. Don't be surprised if he trades Saquon and he jumps up against Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State. Just, guy, this is just a gut feeling. I could be completely wrong.
He trades one Penn State guy and drafts a different Penn State guy.
I didn't even look at it like that. Look, Joey Porter is a wish list for me, but Joey Porter Jr., sorry. But don't be surprised or don't be shocked if they trade Saquon Barkley. Who wants to go next?
Mitch, you got this.
Well, Steve, you keep on bringing up what I'm going with the don't be shocked. I'm going way out of pocket with who I think they're going to take in the first round. And some people might think it's a reach, but I think they're going to go with Will McDonald, the edge out of Iowa State. I just feel like it is a glaring need. And he can kick inside and he can come off the edge. And I just think I'm kind of like what Carl was saying, I just have a gut feeling that's the direction they're going to head because, like I said, you've been talking about it and I've been keeping it in my pocket waiting for this question. Edge is a big need for them. And to me, he's value. He would be value at 25 if they stay.
I love that. And what's his size? Do we know his height and weight roughly?
I think he's like 6'4" in the 270s, but I'd have to look at it. He might 270. I'm sorry, I'm way above on that. He's like in the 250s, but let me see.
I'm bringing it up now myself.
There's a reason I'm asking.
In Buffalo, they kept on drafting.
So he's 6'4", 236.
236. So
it was a loaded question. I knew the answer, but it was a loaded question. I didn't
Okay.
have the exact weight. I love, and I'm not trying to get you. I love what you're saying. He's not a top 10 pick. He's undersized.
Right.
Like, I don't know. He's Hassan Reddick. Temple, drafted by Arizona. Didn't use him correctly. Guy leaves, goes to Philly. Philly says, you know what? We're just going to let this MNFer scream around the edge like the way OC used to. I mean, OC was a little bit bigger, but you know what I mean? This is the type of kid that Wink can say, you know what? I'll figure out how to set the edge over there. Let me worry about that. I'm creative. I'm whatever. I'm going to get this kid screaming around the edge, chasing quarterbacks like a freaking banshee. I love what you're Carl. I love what you're throwing down because I thought about that. I just don't want to say it because you're braver than I am because people are like, but the hate mail is going to start as soon as we're finished with this. And Mitch, I love what you're saying because that's what I've been alluding to. I'm not saying it's him, but each of those guys, there's a few of them and they all bring something. There's a few boom or bust guys too, but I'm telling you, man, you get a guy like that, it might transform the defense, which makes the back end, the corner situation, a little more palatable when you're like, well, now you're screaming around the edges on the front. You team him with Kayvon and Aziz, and you got Dexy in the middle. And now Leonard does a 1 gap instead of a 2 gap. And I'm just saying, I love what you're saying.
And if that comes to fruition, that shows you how much juice Winks has in that Winks' voice has in this organization.
He's been scouting. His coaching staff, they say, has done more scouting than any other coaching staff in the offseason in terms of the bowl games, the workouts, et cetera, et cetera. So
Steve, lay it on us, shock us.
Don't be surprised if the Giants not only take a running back on day 3. I think it could be day 3. Some people think day 2, but I think that's too soon because it's such a strong running back class. You can get really good running backs in the 4th, 5th, 6th round. But if they also take a quarterback, I think next year is more ideal to take a developmental quarterback. I think this year might be the year he just punts and picks a really inexpensive veteran off the scrap heap type of thing. But don't be surprised. The trend in the NFL is to pick these quarterbacks. And it started way back with Russell Wilson, in the 5th round. I mean, you can get a quarterback. Look, the Niners were in the playoffs with Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy in the 7th round. New England did it. multiple times. And every time, what did they do? If they go and they sign as a free agent, now you get comp picks, or they turn into a quarterback you can trade to the Niners. They turn into a quarterback you can trade to Indianapolis. I'm just saying there's value in picking a quarterback if you trust your staff to develop them.
Yes.
If you have a staff that's good at developing quarterbacks, I already know what a lot of fans are listening and watching right now are listening to me going, Steven, you're wrong. That's not a priority. And I would say, you know what? When you're talking the 6th round, relax. You can roll the dice on a quarterback that your staff and scouts know this guy has something. He just needs time to mature, to be trained and developed. I think next year's probably the better year for it, but there might be a quarterback they take on day 3 in the draft. Don't be surprised.
So we've got a little bit of time here. So let's have a little fun. All right.
Yes.
Steve, if they were to go running back, who would you want them to take?
So I'm glad you asked that question, not about running back, but about any position, because look, guys, you know how I love to do my research. And I do it selfishly because it fascinates me, because usually it turns out that I'm wrong about something, but it's like, wow, I had no idea. This is so cool. I just learned something. So in 2000, again, going back to my earlier point, we still know so little about Joe Shane as the GM. We know a lot about him scouting and yada, 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 but we don't know. But if history is our guide, last year, all of these players were drafted and they all were part of our top 30 visits. You know what I'm talking about? Everybody listening or watching, every team is allowed 30, what they call top 30 visits, players that they invite to come visit the team so they can get more information. And then as Shane said last week, sometimes it's because they want to learn more or confirm something about them, but sometimes because they want to eliminate them. We never know. All these players came in for visits and they got drafted last year. Evan Neal, Kayvon Thibodeau, Cordell Flott, Dane Belton, your guy.
Yes.
You know, the Giants were the only team that had him visit.
Yes.
And Daniel Bellinger, I'm a little unclear on. I've seen somewhere that he was a visit, and I've seen some places say he wasn't a visit. They just took him out to dinner out in San Diego and spent a lot of time with him. So the reason I say that is the answer to your question is they had one running back in, and I actually went through the entire list. Keon White, defensive lineman, for what it's worth, of the entire visits, is the guy that I would love them to get. Absolute freak defensive lineman. They had Marvin Mims. They had quarterbacks, linebackers, tight ends, one safety, more corners than any other position, 3 defensive ends, 4 wide receivers, 5 defensive linemen, and 1 center. The running back they had is Kendre Miller. So problem with this year's draft, to answer your question, Carl, and then I'll pass the baton, is there are so many running backs. Like, I don't know how anyone could say, "Yeah, that's the only guy I would really wish them to." I mean, there's just so many good running backs in this class, but I'm putting my stake in the ground. They had Kendre Miller in, and I assume they're going to probably pick him at some point.
Mitch?
Well, you asked who I would like for them to take. I like Chris Rodriguez out of Kentucky. He's just a bowling ball. That's the type of running backs I like, that are just going to sit there and pound you. And to me, that's a great compliment to Barkley if if they're able to sign him and extend him out. Give Rodriguez the ball in the short yardage areas. Let him carry it for a couple series and wear the defense down. I love that guy. And he doesn't have a lot of tread on his tire.
So my pick would be Tajay Spears out of Tulane. Now, not the biggest guy in the draft, not the biggest running back. 4.5 40. Great receiver. Great receiver. Not afraid to finish off a run aggressively. He doesn't shy away from hits. Now, all right, so people could say, well, he's small. How many hits can he take? He's going to break down. But again, so then the question comes, well, if he's similar to Saquon, do they need 2 Saquons? Again, I'm going on the premise that Saquon's not going to be here. So if what I'm saying is right, that's the guy I'd like to see. So I don't know. He's versatile. Maybe who's your starting back or who's your complement? Is it going to be Matt Breida, Gary Brightwell. Who's it going to be? But that's a great 1-2 punch where you mix Spears in with somebody else. So I like him. I love his tape. I think maybe that's the way they go.
Look, the Kansas City got a running back out of Rutgers in the 7th round, and the kid started in the Super Bowl. The Giants got Ahmad Bradshaw in the 7th round, and he helped us get to a Super Bowl along with, Jacobs. So there's running, and this is probably the strongest running back class we've seen in at least a decade, top to bottom. I mean, you're going to get guys who are in the 5th and 6th round that are going to play significant time. And just to show you the quality, since we're talking running backs, of the Giants staff and how good they are, the running back in Houston that we played against, who was up for Rookie of the Year, he played at University of Florida.
Sure.
The Giants had him in last year as one of their visits.
Yeah.
Most people never even heard of him going into the draft, unless you're like a SEC fan or diehard. He wasn't like a top running back prospect. The Giants had him in. Like, these guys know what they're doing. They know who's talented. I'm not excited at all for the top 20 picks in terms of what these guys are going to do in the NFL, but I'm excited to see who drops. I'm excited for what the Giants end up doing.
And that was the other thing.
It's going to be fun.
Steve, I don't mean to interrupt you, but you just kind of planted the seed in my hand. That was one of the other reasons why I like Tajay Spears. I think what the Giants are trying, or where the direction that they're trying to go in an offense, and what kind of offense they're trying to run, I think he fits. He's more like their Devon Singletary when they had in Buffalo.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I equated there. So I could be dead wrong, but I mean, I watch his tape, people. I love his tape. I think he's great. I really do. Guys, this was a lot of, I love this show. I wish we could do this show every week, because this is great. Mitch, you always come prepared, and you're a great guest. We love having you on. So thank you again for coming on, and enjoy the draft party.
Oh, yeah, it was my pleasure being on here. I love talking draft. I love that they're starting to move back in the draft, and we don't, can't zero in on who they're going to take at 5th. So
Nice.
25 will be fun. And like I know I'm definitely looking forward to the draft party. It should be a blast.
Excellent. Steve,
Awesome.
always a pleasure. I'm sure we'll be talking Thursday night, both hockey and draft. So I still have to figure out how I'm going to do that. I'm
2 TVs, Carl. 2 TVs.
Yeah, I only have one here in the office, so it's either I move one
But,
in, watch something on the computer. So I don't know, but I'll work.
Well, the hockey game could be over by the time the Giants finally drafted 25. Don't forget that.
That's true.
I don't even want to think like that. Well, all right. Anyway, it's a sore spot, guys. Great job tonight, Mitch. Again, enjoy the party. Thanks again for hopping on with us. We really appreciate it. We always enjoy having you on.
Thanks, guys.
Good
Thank
night,
you, Mitch.
everybody. Thanks for watching. Have a good time. Enjoy the draft.
Well,
You too.